Welcome to In the Zone. I'm Joshua Gearhart, joined by Peyton Zimmers. This week we'll have the latest in what was a crazy week for college and pro football. In the Zone starts right now.
It bounces off the crossbar, and it's good! Oh my goodness! Oh my goodness!
Murray heaves it downfield. It is. Oh, it's caught!
It is caught! In college football, 15th ranked Washington put their undefeated record on the line as they traveled to Los Angeles to take on UCLA. Despite nearly losing to South Alabama a few weeks ago, UCLA also entered this game undefeated. Surprisingly, Washington's deficit was 24 entering the fourth quarter. However, the Huskies did not quit as they made a bit of a comeback, scoring 16 in the fourth quarter, but ultimately fell short. UCLA pulled off the upset, beating Washington 40-32. Peyton, what was your reaction to this big game?
You know what? I will be honest, I was not expecting the result of UCLA beating Washington.
Dude, I don't think anybody was expecting this result. I mean, let's look at Penix's stats here real quick. He was 38 for 48, threw for 345 yards and 4 tutties. This man put on an amazing performance and somehow still lost.
But I will say UCLA was firing on all possible cylinders in this game.
You know, and I think, Washington's offense was one-dimensional this game. We look at Penix's stats. I mean, look at them. Penix he had one target, and that was Odunze. He had 8 receptions for 116 yards and 2 touchdowns. When you know somebody is producing those kind of numbers, you corner them, you shut them down. UCLA did just that.
And you know what? Washington, they're still good. Don't count them out. But, they just were not as on target as they were the past couple weeks.
Correct.
Meanwhile, UCLA was just right on the money.
And even after this loss, I said it earlier, I'm still impressed with Michael Penix Jr. Michael Penix he balled out. There's no other way to say it. I think that Michael Penix is going to have almost like a Kenny Pickett type season. We look at Kenny Pickett's numbers before he had that big year at Pitt was it 2 years ago now? But he's playing amazing. This is not the same Michael Penix we saw at Indiana. It's not. I mean, Penn State shut him down the last time they played him. All the big teams, 10 teams had his number last time they saw him in the Big Ten. But right now, in the Pac-12, he's found his groove. And yes, the Huskies suffered a defeating loss because they just came off a big upset against Michigan State. You have a big upset against Michigan State, and then you turn around and you get upset to UCLA. Peyton, in your eyes, how do you recover from this kind of upset?
Well, you just forget about it and just move on to the next one. Honestly,
that's all you can do.
It's in the past. You can't go back and fix that. But what you can do is look into the future.
Correct. And I think Washington, they can win a lot more games. I don't think this is the last time we'll see them back in the rankings.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt.
I think they are a very talented team that is just on the cusp, especially with Penix under center. Their potential is skyrocketing.
Hey. We can't argue here with the UCLA stats either.
No, absolutely not. They played a heck of a game too.
They did. So in the SEC, Kentucky entered the week ranked 7th and looked to stay undefeated as they took on Ole Miss. The Rebels were also entering the week off to a good start as they were ranked 14th, undefeated as well. Kentucky and Ole Miss went back and forth all game, but Ole Miss squeaked out the slim 22-19 win over Kentucky. Josh, your thoughts?
Well, I'm just going to say one thing only. Ladies and gentlemen, all aboard the Lane train because it's chugging along the tracks right now. Lane Kiffin has got a squad this year. And you know what? I might not have been very impressed with Jackson Dart this game, but, we talk all the time about how coaching in college football can make, taking a team that's, just about average and elevate them to new standards. Lane Kiffin is that guy. He's in the conversation with, the Kirby Smarts, the Dabo Sweeneys, the Nick Sabans. He is that guy to take a program to the next level, and we see that. In his defense, they played great, Peyton. Will Levis has been widely regarded as one of the best draft picks in this year's upcoming draft. He had 2 fumbles.
He did.
He had 2 fumbles and lost both of them. Before this game, I've been very high on Kentucky all year long. They've been rising to the challenges, beating teams in big game situations. And Will Levis has played phenomenally for them. Let's go back to their win against Florida. Will Levis balled out. The defense balled out. And that's not a bad team. Florida was really good to start off the year. And I think if we look back, Kentucky has gained a lot of confidence in that since that win. But now, Ole Miss comes to town, and they shake things up.
I will say, this was like one of my favorite college games because it had a mix of everything. It wasn't like a blowout, and it was down to the wire, really, because both teams were making giant plays. It was back and forth, and the excitement really never stopped from start to finish.
No, absolutely, you're right. And it wasn't a runaway either. Both teams were in it in the defensive play. If you loved great defensive play in college football, that's one heck of a game to watch, Peyton.
This was.
Coming off a loss last week, Oklahoma looked to bounce back this week as they went to Fort Worth to take on TCU. The Horned Frogs got out to a 20-3 lead in the first quarter and never looked back. Matters only got worse for the Sooners as Dillon Gabriel left the game due to an injury. Peyton, TCU dominated Oklahoma 55-24. What is up with the Sooners, my guy?
They're just not good. They just got ran all over. They couldn't stop anything. They couldn't stop the run. They couldn't even stop some of the passes. It was just a disaster for them.
We look at this game, too. TCU was unranked. Oklahoma just came off a big-time loss again to Kansas State, who has had their number year after year after year. Peyton, I think they've collapsed. They've collapsed. That loss to Kansas State might have just ruined their season because TCU was not a team they should have lost to.
No, they
it was
shouldn't.
not. They had talent. And you know what? I think that Dillon Gabriel injury really took the team downhill. And it's fair because they were still in the rankings, and your top quarterback goes down. That shakes up the team. And there were a lot of injuries this game too, Peyton. They had one of their other players had a scary, scary injury. I don't know if you watched that at all, but one of their players went in for a tackle. His head got bent back. He had to get carried off on a stretcher.
Worst kind of injury there.
Yeah, and when that kind of happens too, someone who's played sports, you see one of your teammates go off on a stretcher. It really affects your psyche and your mindset for the rest of the game. Goes from let's win this game to oh my goodness, I hope my teammate is okay.
Right, and obviously that doesn't help, but it's almost like those injuries, like the balloon was already deflating,
Correct.
But there was more holes that got punctured
Right.
into the already deflating balloon.
They were trying to patch some holes in the sinking boat, but the injury hole was a big hole, and that just collapsed the Oklahoma ship.
And TCU just went running with it.
TCU in there firing on all cylinders, just like we said earlier.
So in the Big Ten, Minnesota came into the week not only ranked 21st, but also looked to improve to 5-0. Instead, Minnesota fell flat on their face, losing to Purdue 20-10. Josh, was Minnesota overrated coming into this game?
Peyton, this is a tough one to even kind of go through because Purdue didn't even look that good either. O'Connell threw 2 picks, and O'Connell is widely regarded as one of the best quarterbacks in the Big Ten. This game, to me, I don't even know how to describe it, to be honest with you. Do I think Minnesota deserved their rating, their ranking? Yeah, I do. Do I think they should have beat Purdue? Yes and no. Purdue's got one of the best receivers right now in the entire college football, Charlie Jones. That man transferred from Iowa to come and play with Aiden O'Connell, and they had a connection in high school. So that connection is already there in their first year together. These two are putting up ridiculous numbers, and they're hard to stop. I think Purdue is a good team. I think Penn State, give them a loss, that kind of really collapsed their momentum and confidence. We've seen that a lot with teams, not only this week, but all around college football lately. And I think Minnesota can bounce back. I think they have one of the best coaches in the Big Ten in PJ Fleck. I really think if they kind of rally around their leader and their big senior, Tanner Morgan, I think they'll be all right. I really do. They also have one of the best backs in the Big Ten, Mohamed Ibram. So I really think if they can rally around those two guys, and like we said earlier about having to get behind a big loss and put that behind you, I think they'll get away from it and they'll move forward in the right direction. As we enter Week 6, let's take a look at the current top 6 rankings. Alabama reclaims number 1 this week as Georgia moves down to number 2, and no change for Ohio State, Michigan, Clemson, or USC. Peyton, which of these 6 teams do you see making it to the college football playoff this year?
All right, let's get the first 2 out of the way. We can already probably shoot Georgia and Alabama right into the playoffs. Although they did not look great this weekend.
Georgia has scared me the past 2 weeks. Kent State came to town, and almost, Peyton, they were knocking on the doorstep to really pull up a historical and monumental upset.
But even bigger yet, how about Missouri versus them this weekend?
That was also scary. So if you ask me, I have not been impressed with Georgia lately, and I do not think they deserve their ranking.
I'm not disagreeing with that, but I'm pretty sure they're probably going to still get into the playoffs.
They still deserve to be in the top 5, but I think Kirby Smart has got to regroup his guys and get them back focused.
I was really hoping Missouri would have beaten Georgia just to get them bumped way down.
Everybody was. But no, if we're looking at teams that I think had the potential to be in there, yeah, I mean, Georgia and Alabama are definitely safe bets. And I'll be interested to see if, Bryce Young's injury impacts him at all. But if we change the conversation now to teams that we think don't deserve to be there, 5 and 6 got to go. Clemson and USC. I know people are going to, get on me for saying USC because, you got Lincoln Riley, you got Caleb Williams, you got Jordan Addison. But you know what? They are beyond overrated, Peyton.
I'm about to say, they've been rocky.
They have been. They haven't been steady. And, their offense is great. Offense is great. That's not what I have an issue with. Their defense is maybe average at best. It is. I mean, I couldn't name you one stellar player on USC's defense. I couldn't.
You couldn't.
I couldn't. And do I think Clemson deserves their top 5 ranking at number 5? No. No, I don't. Because I don't think DJ is their guy. You've seen that time and time again. Although, he did show signs of improvement against NC State. So for me, that was a great step in the young maturation of DJ. We'll see how it plays out, but what are your thoughts on that?
Well, how about we take a look at Ohio State and Michigan?
Tell me what you think about Michigan, Peyton.
Well, I feel like they're going to get their test here in the next coming weeks. They have Penn State coming in, which I actually, hot take, think Michigan will lose that game.
Oh, no. You don't want to jinx me like that, Peyton. I love the sound of it, but it's going to be a tough test in the big house for sure.
On the other side of this break, we'll have our thoughts on Week 4 in the NFL. Don't go anywhere. In the Zone, we'll be right back.
Week 4 of the NFL, all eyes were on Tua and the Dolphins on Thursday night as they took on the Bengals. Last week, a huge topic of discussion was how quickly Tua went back in the game after suffering a concussion against the Bills. This week, it did not get any better, as another huge hit to Tua would end his night. Tagovailoa was carted off the field on a stretcher. Dolphins head coach Mike McDaniel said that Tagovailoa suffered a head and neck injuries in Thursday night loss to Cincinnati. It was recently announced that Tagovailoa will be out for next week's game against the Jets. Peyton, your thoughts on this crazy situation?
Well, first off here, he shouldn't have been out there playing.
No way he should have been out there playing. I agree with you completely.
Because he suffered a concussion that Sunday.
Correct.
And then they're playing Thursday.
Correct.
That's not many days to recover from a concussion.
It's not. And the extent of that concussion he suffered on Sunday looked pretty bad, considering he was very wobbly, he was unsturdy, and he couldn't walk on his own, really. His center had to pull him up.
I don't know why they decided to play him. I don't know if it was his decision. The doctor said he was okay. I mean, one doctor did get fired.
He did. See, here's the thing of NFL safety, Peyton. These players want to play at all costs, right? Because that's how they collect their paychecks.
Right.
And they want to be on that field, getting the recognition, getting the fame, and getting the big paychecks at the end of the day. So let me ask you this. If you're an NFL player, okay, let's say you're an NFL quarterback for the Packers, okay? Let's say you're a starter quarterback for the Packers, right? You suffered a concussion. Doctor comes to you, asks you, how do you think you're feeling? You think you're going to want to say no, or you think you're going to keep playing?
Well,
let's look at it from an athlete's perspective here, Peyton.
Your heart would tell you want to keep playing.
Correct, you want to keep playing.
However, you also got to look out for your own safety. Like,
That's
think
correct.
about it. One more big hit, you could be done.
That's true.
For good.
And we saw that with Tua. He's not done, but it was scary.
It was scary. Like, his hand seized up.
Yeah, he was almost compulsing.
Like,
yeah.
That's definitely, like, telltale signs of a head and neck injury.
Absolutely. It was very scary, and they treated it the way they should have. It's very hard, though, since we're not in that situation of an NFL player, to say, oh, yeah, we'd want to rest and take it easy. But in realities, this is their job.
Yes.
This is what they get paid to do. I mean, they live, breathe, and die football. That's all they know.
Tua was lucky that he wasn't out. Like, he could have not gotten hit, and that was it for his whole career.
The way he got tossed was very, very scary, and he's very lucky that he was only a concussion. It could have been much worse.
Oh, yeah, he could have broke his neck.
Exactly. So I think this situation is going to raise awareness to player safety issues that have been ongoing throughout the league that have been silenced for years.
Absolutely.
In Baltimore, the Ravens and the Bills went head-to-head in one of the better matchups of the week. Once again, the Ravens got off to a great start. Baltimore's defense stifled Buffalo, and the offense was indeed clicking. The Ravens got off to a 20-3 lead, looking to finish the deal, unlike a few weeks ago in their loss to Miami. However, it was more of the same for the Ravens, as they blew yet another big lead at home. Buffalo finished off the comeback, winning 23-20. Peyton, your thoughts?
It's almost reminded me of the Falcons, how they blow, they get up right here and then they blow the lead. That's what the Ravens are doing.
Yeah, it's almost scary too, because you think about the Ravens, they're known for having a great defense.
I'm about to say, and they're also talented on offense too.
Absolutely.
Like, you have Lamar Jackson, J.K. Dobbins is back now.
Lamar Jackson's been putting up an MVP-type season right now. But the thing that I'm concerned is they spent a first-round draft pick on Kyle Hamilton out of Notre Dame to help really improve their secondary. It has not paid out that way. Think about it this way, Peyton. They started off that game 20-3 with that big lead. They never scored again. And they allowed 20 unanswered points. Yeah. What are you doing right now if you're John Harbaugh?
Getting concerned, really, because, if you're allowing unanswered points and you're not doing anything, you're going to lose every game.
Yeah.
You can get up as high as you can, but if you start blowing the lead, you're done.
Absolutely. The Ravens are a great team. They have a great offense. They've historically had great defenses. I think they need to regroup, and they need to play a full 60 minutes. It sounds easy, and it sounds not complicated, but when we think about it, playing a full 60-minute NFL game takes, stamina, it takes strength, and it takes resiliency. The Ravens got to practice that and perfect that right now. In another AFC East, AFC North matchup, the Jets traveled to Pittsburgh to take on the Steelers. Zach Wilson was back for this week for the Jets, as the Steelers fans were hoping this would be the Kenny Pickett week. Pickett makes an appearance after trailing 10-6 at halftime. Pittsburgh did indeed send in Pickett to start the second half. However, a fighting effort from the Jets gave them the 24-20 win. Peyton, the Jets have a better record than the Steelers. How bizarre.
I will say that is not one I'm expecting, because the Jets have not been good for X number of years. I can't even tell you the last time they were good.
See, this is coming from a Steelers fan, and this is unfortunate that I'm saying this. It's expected. It's expected. I've always been worried about this season from the off season, but I think after this game, I'm a little bit more wary. I'm not upset at Kenny Pickett for his performance. Only one interception was his fault. And I think giving him the start these next couple games is exactly what he needs to mature him and help him grow and develop in the right ways. My concern is this. The Steelers had the most money, okay? Most money and the most cap space in the offseason to spend. They signed Miles Jack, linebacker. Granted, he's great. Don't get me wrong. I like him. But I don't think we needed that help at the linebacker position. Our problem lies in our secondary.
Yes.
We are losing one-on-one coverage battles left and right. Jacoby Brissett and Amari Cooper, and even David Njoku, who's a tight end for crying out loud. David Njoku had 100 receiving yards on the Steelers. If that's not cause for concern, I don't know what is.
It's very concerning for the Steelers. They've been having rocky years even with Ben's previous,
Look, I love Ben Roethlisberger. I love the Steelers. I think this will be Mike Tomlin's first year that we ever see him under 500. Mike Tomlin has never had a season in which he's finished under 500.
I will go with that. I will take you on that one.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that Steeler Nation wants to see, and myself included, Matt Canada's got to go. His offense has become way too predictable, and teams have figured it out.
Oh, yes.
I think we need to change the offensive coordinator position to help these players thrive to their full potential, because I don't know about you, but George Pickens is fed up right now. And George Pickens is fed up. He had a great game against the Jets, but he didn't score, unfortunately. But George Pickens is fed up, and rightfully so. I think this quarterback change might be the needed spark the offense needs to lift up their spirits and their performance. We'll see what happens, though. But I want to talk about the Jets a little bit. Everybody always thinks that the Jets are, kind of under the radar, not the greatest team. That might be the case. But I think they had the best draft class in the NFL this year, and I think it's really going to show. And believe it or not, I do like Zach Wilson.
He is good. I do like him, too.
He gets the job done.
He does.
Absolutely. The Eagles entered this past Sunday as the only undefeated team in the league after Miami's Thursday night loss. Despite an ugly start which gave Jacksonville a 14-0 lead in the first quarter, the Eagles would not quit. Philadelphia turned the tables on Jacksonville, shutting out the Jags and scoring 20 points themselves. The Eagles used that strong second quarter to send them on their way to a 4-0 record for the first time since 2004. Peyton, how about them Birds?
They are very impressive this year, I will say that.
All my time seeing Jalen Hurts play, I've always thought he's not the guy. But you know what? I think he is him. And I'm so happy to see Miles Sanders exploding this year.
I'm about to say, he's been going off.
He is the running back that we saw at Penn State, putting up these numbers. He's back. Saquon's back. I'm not an Eagles fan myself. I'm a Steelers fan. So it's kind of hard when I see the Eagles win. But when I see people like Miles Sanders doing well, I can't help but feel happy for him with my Penn State allegiance.
Oh, right.
But I really do think right now, Peyton, the Eagles are the real deal. I think they're scary. I think their offense is out of this world right now. And I really think that their defense is something we haven't seen from them in quite some time.
Absolutely.
This is a defense and an offense that almost mirrors that same style that we saw from the Eagles Super Bowl team. They might not be the most flashiest. They might not be the most, the best offense. They might have the best players. But you know what, Peyton? They get it done.
They do
and
get it.
And they have been getting it done. Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, Miles Sanders, Devontae Smith, all these guys are stepping up, making big-time plays. And the Eagles are just rolling. I don't think right now there's any team in my mind right now that could potentially stop them other than maybe the Bills or the Chiefs.
There was some intriguing action in the late window of the games in Week 4. Also, we'll have a reaction to those games after this short break. Stick around. In the Zone, we'll be right back.
In the late window on Sunday, New England went to Green Bay to take on the Packers. New England was without their starting quarterback, Mac Jones, as Brian Hoyer was sent to start against Green Bay. Hoyer did not get much playing time, as he also got injured, sending in Bailey Zappi. Rodgers and the Packers struggled, and Zappi and the Patriots were able to force overtime. Green Bay started with the ball in overtime, but wound up punting. The Patriots did the same thing, giving the Packers another chance to win the game. Rodgers got his team in field goal range, and Mason Crosby kicked the game winner. Peyton, how are you feeling after the Packers almost lost to Bailey Zappi?
Nervous, but I will say, Bailey Zappi had a good game, actually.
Bailey Zappi holds, I believe, records. He played at Western Kentucky University and set the most records for passing touchdowns by a quarterback in his single season. Bailey Zappi, he's a dog. I mean, the man can sling the rock. And I honestly, after this week, I would love him to be elevated to QB number 2.
I could actually see that happening.
I would. Nothing against Brian Hoyer. I mean, he's been around the league forever. He's a good veteran. He's a good person to have on your quarterback staff to really mentor these young guys. But Bailey Zappi, he showed out for the Patriots. He really did. And he decimated your Packers defense. Let's talk about that, shall we?
I don't want to get started about. First off, we were just awful this weekend. We just were not firing on any cylinders.
That makes 2 of our teams not looking good.
Rodgers, he was throwing the ghost in the first half. He was overshooting his pass, something he rarely ever does. And then on top of that, he threw a pick 6, which that's really when I started to really deflate myself. Now, it was great when Crosby came out and kicked the game-winning field goal that we beat Bill Belichick.
He's always reliable, isn't he?
He is reliable.
Yes.
But I was just not impressed this weekend.
What is your major concern as we progress through this season? Do you think you guys can hang with the top teams in your division right now?
We can if we can manage to play good, but other than that, no.
I mean, answer me this. Who is your number 1 receiver now? Because right now, your Packers wide receivers are struggling.
I can't even tell you who it could be, because it could be one guy this week, could be another guy. I would say Lazard.
That's my go-to answer. I think Lazard is probably your go-to. I mean, Lazard has shown time and time again. I think he's the main man in Green Bay right now. I really do. I think he's shown flashes of brilliance, and he's mostly consistent. He is. I mean, you lost Davante Adams, so you got to find somebody to fill that spot.
That's what hurt us the most. We lost one of the best receivers in the NFL to
absolutely.
the Raiders. And we somehow just can't recover from that loss of losing Davante Adams.
I think if you called him right now, though, I'm sure he'd be on the next flight to Green Bay tomorrow. I think so.
Well, he hasn't been doing much in Las Vegas.
No one's doing much in Las Vegas.
That's true. And, that team surprises me, too.
Yes.
But we're actually going to get into that right now.
Well, speaking of that, in another late game on Sunday, the Raiders were still in search of their first win as they hosted Denver. The Broncos themselves have not exactly gotten off to the best start either. Looking for a big Week 4 win, things finally seem to come together for the Raiders as they hit the jackpot and won their first game of the season. Peyton, does this ease any concern for the Raiders?
Absolutely not.
I agree with you.
But they have so many weapons, though.
I said this a couple weeks ago. They finally got Josh Jacobs involved, and look what happened.
He exploded.
Look what happened.
He exploded this weekend.
They have a dominant back in Josh Jacobs, and they need to use him much more often. Not only for my fantasy purposes, but for their purposes as well. Take some of the pressure off your receivers. Take the pressure off Derek Carr, who has looked kind of shaky this year. You have Josh Jacobs use him, and they finally did. I think if they follow that format and that formula they used against Denver this week, they have a chance to really put things back on track. I'm not saying that they're done this year yet. I'm not. There is so much more games yet to play. But they got to figure out that what worked this week might be something they want to stick with. Your thoughts?
I was at the beginning of the season, before we started, I thought the Raiders were actually going to be good because they have
Darren
Waller.
Best teams
they have
in the NFL.
Darren Waller, one of the arguably best tight ends in the NFL. They got Davante Adams. They have Josh Jacobs.
And you know what? Derek Carr, believe it or not, I think he's
a decent quarterback.
He's a top 10 quarterback.
He's a top 10 quarterback.
I
don't disagree with that.
He is. And he has so many weapons right now that could really help elevate his game to the next level. But unfortunately, it hasn't played out that way. So, and Josh Jacobs is one of those weapons.
He is.
When we see him get involved in the game, look what happens, Peyton. Look what happens. It's amazing how an amazing run game can transform your entire offense and your season.
Well, let's take a look at the other side here. The Broncos were not riding.
They're not riding. Russell Wilson's Bronco Nation. Let's ride.
And they aren't riding anything right now.
The ride is not a smooth ride, Peyton.
It's not.
It is not a smooth ride. Sunday night's game this week was between the Chiefs and the Buccaneers. After a bad loss to the Colts last week, the Chiefs put that behind them and started off strong against Tom Brady and the Bucs in Week 4. Kansas City handed the Brady's Bucs their second straight loss and their 41-31 win. Peyton, any concern for the Buccaneers this year?
Actually, yes. The running game is lackluster.
It's very lackluster.
The Fournette's good, don't get me wrong.
He is.
But he's not top quality.
The offensive line, to me, is not what they were when they won that Super Bowl.
Right.
I mean, let's look at how the Chiefs' defensive line manhandled the O-line of the Bucs.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you got guys like Chris Jones up there who were eating up. And they were going to eat up against the offensive line that's so depleted. And another thing that I'm really questioning, too, Tom Brady and Giselle just hired divorce lawyers.
Oh, yeah.
Do we really think Brady expected to come back and play like this in a season where he's literally throwing everything away?
I was about to say, he's probably not in the best mental state right now.
I would assume
going
not.
through that kind of a divorce, I'm assuming.
I would hope so, yeah.
And that's probably affecting his gameplay.
I mean, it looks like it is. He has a lower QBR rating than Geno Smith right now.
Yeah, which that takes a lot, especially from him being
quite
way up
concerning,
here.
You think, because look at the talent around him. Chris Godwin,
yes.
Mike Evans, Julio Jones. My question to you is, Peyton, how much do you think he misses Gronkowski?
I think he does, because that was his man for the longest time. Like, up in New England, that's who he went to 90% of the time. That was who he wanted.
And he's got all these big names receivers, also including Julio Jones and, Russell Gage. But there's a problem with the Bucs right now. They're not connecting. They're not clicking. And we saw that against the Chiefs. They could have beat the Chiefs.
Oh, they could have.
I mean, the Colts found a way to.
I thought that was going to actually be a decent game.
But
it actually wasn't.
I mean, there's a reason why they put it on a Sunday or Monday night game. I mean, they thought primetime game, primetime action. It was not.
It wasn't.
It was not a primetime game.
I also think that Brady's mental, he's
Yeah.
not playing well, is affecting everybody else. Because all teams that
He's your leader.
He's the leader, and he was the leader at New England. He was the
Absolutely.
leader in the Buccaneers. He is just like, his attitude is probably spilling over to everyone else.
Well, you hope it's not, but I think you have a valid point. I really do. I think, for me, there's concern in the fact that, almost like the Raiders, you bring in all these big name talents. Where is the production? It's really fallen off.
We'll see. So that will do it for this week's edition of In the Zone. I'm Peyton Simmers.
And I'm Joshua Gearhart, and thanks for watching. And we'll see you next time on In the Zone.